Badasses in Tech is brought to you by Growth Stack Media. If you're looking to scale your business affordably through public relations, video production, or podcasting, we've got you covered. Visit growthstackmedia.com to get in touch today. All right, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Badasses in Tech. Today, I'm joined by Tammarrian Rogers. Tammarrian has been recognized by Forbes as one of the world's top 50 women in tech. Tammarrian has spent the last 30 years leading engineering teams in both hardware and software at General Motors, Apple, Microsoft, and most recently, Snap. In 2021, Tammarrian left her role as Snap's first inclusive engineering director to head up her own venture, Sarell, where she's focusing on developing methodologies for global relational healing to create a sustainable future. Hello. Welcome, Tammarrian. It is such an honor to have you here today.
Thank you so much, Summer. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Of course, I did my best to capture all of your amazing achievements. So let me know if there's anything I missed.
You know, the only thing I would say, you did it very well, capture my last few decades on this planet. The last 2.5 years, I've been a solo nomad, and I've had the honor to be traveling all over the world. It's been amazing adventure, and I'm happy to share more about that in a bit. But that's the only thing I would add to the intro that you just gave.
I would say that deserves a spot on the list for sure. So we'll definitely have to get into what it's like being a solo nomad. And I know we talked a little bit about where you are these days before the episode. So yeah, it sounds like you've been able to pop all over the globe, which is awesome. So yes. What do you think got you started on such an impressive path, Ryan?
This is it's not an easy question to answer because it's so nonlinear. There was, when I was very young, I wanted to be a construction worker, and I also wanted to own a t-shirt business, and I wanted to get my hands dirty, and I wanted to put things put words and pictures on t-shirts and make people think and connect with one another. And my mom quickly said, hell to the no, because she was very worried about just me, being in a dangerous environment with construction. She didn't quite at the time know how I would be able to make a living for myself with, t-shirts. And this was back in the 80s. So I quickly found out that, being a physician or an engineer were just had a little bit more of a favorable response. And so I ended up studying electrical engineering, but my internships were all in software engineering and hardware engineering, nothing with electronics. So I found myself out of my comfort zone. I'd learn something in school and do something completely different in my internships. And so my path has always been, interestingly, around just following a curiosity. Something would be presented to me, and then I would say, let me just check it out. And that's what would happen. I applied for internships, would get into these various roles that had nothing to do with what I was studying. And even when I was leaving graduate school, I saw that, Microsoft was interviewing on campus. I felt very confident that I would not get the job. I was failing miserably at all of my other interviewing for electrical engineering positions. So I said, well, let me just try this Microsoft place because I know they don't want me. I don't see anyone in their brochures that look like me. So it's got to be a safe space because they were known as the most difficult interviewer on campus. And I was very surprised. I did a little talk about this, a 5-minute talk on this, just the experience of interviewing at Microsoft. I call it landing the job I never wanted. And I ended up being there for 23 years. And so all the way till today has been just exploring what's been in front of me. It's somehow being open to, I think I'm going in this direction, but also it may not actually manifest that way. And I think that has, I couldn't have articulated it that way 10 or 20 years ago, but that's pretty much what's been happening.
Wow. So it sounds like you've always had kind of this entrepreneurial spirit, and it sounds like you've always been curious and you've allowed your curiosity to open doors for you. And then it sounds like I love to dig in a little bit more about the job that you didn't want, because as you were talking, I'm thinking, is she just wanting to go after the most challenging thing, or was there something there that you were trying to get out of that? Oh, I don't think I'm going to be able to do this. Were you just trying to prove them wrong, prove yourself wrong? What do you think that motivation was?
There was nothing about that, Summer. I would be able to say that, but it was, I am tanking on every interview. I know that this company won't hire me because there's no other signal that says that they would be interested in me. I don't have a background that they have put in any of their brochures about who they're looking for. I don't look like anyone in their brochures. And it would be nice to actually go into an interview knowing ahead of time that they probably won't hire me, but then practice how to engage, like take some of the pressure off. And
sure.
How do I interview? And so I think because I went into that environment in a much more relaxed state, thinking, this is me practicing. I need more practice. Obviously, I'm not doing well on the other interviews. So there was no proving. It was just an acceptance of what I thought was reality, which was there was just a disinterest in me in terms of background and in appearance.
Wow. That's pretty strong if you think about that. You know, you were dealing with, let's say, rejection in some of these other interviews. And instead of just giving up, you were like, you know what? I'm going to turn this into a gift. And I'm going to say, let's just take the pressure off of this. This is clearly, for practice. And isn't that interesting, right? Like the one role that you were like, this is just practice. It ended up being, like you said, 23 years of your career. So how did that feel?
It's still kind of surprising to me. I mean, I had an alternative plan. I said, okay, well, this Microsoft company is well known. Okay, maybe I'll go check it out for a year. And then I'll go back to school and study biomedical engineering at the University of Washington. And I did not know what a stock option was when I got to Microsoft. I had no idea what it was. Suddenly I had them and I didn't know what to do with them. And so I happened to run into an amazing financial advisor that was offering some education to us young people. Yeah. And I said, hey, can you just help me figure out what to do? And that conversation was pivotal because I had shared that I was going to leave in a year to go pursue, another degree in engineering. And she said, why don't you just hang in here for about 5 years, which meant that I would be fully vested. Right. And then go to school. You'll be a little bit more comfortable and you would have some experience under your belt. And that's a good time to, maybe pursue this. That was a pivotal conversation because I had already decided I'm going to go ahead and leave. I will have it on my resume and then I'll take off. But I said, okay, well, let me just try it out and see what happens for 2 years. Let me try 3 years. And 5 turned into 10 and 10 turned into 20. So it's pretty unbelievable to me that I was there for as long as I was, but it was absolutely a great career, a lot of learning and a lot of great people I met.
Yeah, no, it sounds like this mindset of let's just try it out. Like as you're talking, I'm almost picturing like, this is a playground, these 2 years, let's see what I can learn. Let's see the impact I can make. What types of knowledge can I get, whether it's personal finance or how to lead teams or work across teams. Like I could imagine, again, when you don't have so much pressure of, I want to stay here and, be the best of the best, like that's great. But I'm sure people kind of burn out a little bit versus this mindset that you had. Let's see what happens. And here you are, I just mentioned, recognized as top 50 women in the world. So let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, you're saying you went from, I didn't think I was even going to get this job to, clearly you're doing something right. So can you tell us a little bit about what you think that journey was like?
Yeah, that was it. That was actually a surprise to me, Summer. Forbes reached out to me and I thought it was a spam mail. I literally was going to throw it out. And I just thought, well, that is a strange, is this phishing? What is this?
Yeah. Well, that's smart.
Sent it. Yeah. So I sent it over to our comms department and I said, I'm not sure if this is real. But I just thought, instead of just throwing it out and assuming that it isn't real, you can check it out. And they said, no, we've checked it out. This is real. And I didn't know. There was no application. There was nothing that was asking me about what have you accomplished in your career? What do you aspire to do? What are you doing now? There was none of that. I was identified as someone that they wanted to recognize. And I was really honored to be recognized. And I think there may have been some things that contributed to that, just in terms of being at Microsoft as long as I was in various roles, from individual contributor to leadership roles. But I also had a chance to participate in some of the organizations outside of the company and contribute to people that were trying to enter into the tech space. I had a chance to work with Ada Developers Academy in Seattle, Washington, which is an educational institution that really trains women, or people who identify as women, to be able to code and get into these spaces. And it's a free program. It's a great program that offers 9 months of training and then 3 months of an internship. And there's no guarantee you'll get the job at the end, but you have the experience of both learning and on the job. And that was a great opportunity to contribute to. That, to me, I think some of those things that I was engaged in beyond my work inside of Microsoft may have elevated my exposure a bit. But all of that was not because I wanted to land on Forbes top 50.
Right. Of course.
It was
of course.
100% because I was exploring and I was following heart.
Yeah.
And I was also just trying to do what I could to give back, while also contributing to the best of my ability in my current role, which, by the way, was filled with me running away from leadership roles.
Ooh, let's tap into that a little bit more, because founder to me equals you're running the show, you're leading. So Let's talk a little bit about that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no. So throughout especially in my early years at Microsoft, I really felt that I was really learning, how to code, because my electrical engineering degree didn't offer me a lot of training on coding. And so for me, I felt like I needed to be in the trenches as long as I could be to learn some of the fundamentals that a lot of my peers seemed to have. Though at that time, there were people that were English majors, philosophy majors, very diverse backgrounds contributing to a quality engineering space. That's not the case today, but back then there was a very, very wide range of people contributing. And so for me, it was important to really try to master some of these core skills. But in each of my roles, within a year to 18 months, I would be asked to step into a leadership position, and it depended on the team. So I'd be on one team, Word for the Mac. I'd be working along, and somehow people would approach me and say, "Hey, we'd like for you to step into a lead role." And I would kindly say no. And he said, well, and I started to get to a point where, I couldn't quite resist and couldn't fight it, because they were saying, we need you to be in this role. And I'm like, okay, well, I didn't want to be responsible for other people's career.
Right.
And so I would literally change teams. After a while, I would change teams and go into individual contributing roles, again, to reset and learn the space. And sure enough, within 18 months, I was again, and that continued to happen until I finally said, look, what am I doing so I can stop doing it? And I think it was the curiosity piece. I think it was because I was always unafraid to ask questions, and especially if I didn't understand something. And it was easier for me in those positions when I was in an individual contributing role, than it was when I was in the leadership roles, because there was an expectation that I already understood it. I already knew what was going on. I would have the answers. But when I'm in the individual contributor role, it was much easier to ask the questions, be in that curiosity space. And I felt like some of that was taken away as I, came into those leadership roles. But then after a while of being in those leadership roles, I started to realize that, yes, it is important to keep asking the questions. And so eventually I just learned to embrace it. But I tell you, I went through a lot of shoes, resisting leadership roles and being honored to be offered the positions, but also worried and concerned about how I would be able to lead others effectively.
Totally. No, I completely relate to that. I mean, there's a safety to being an expert in your domain, right? Like, for example, I'm all PR. So I have clients that they are asking me to just do all things PR. And I love that. That feels safe. But then there are instances, or there's clients or projects where I have to be a little bit more of maybe an integrated marketing lead and still be curious. And to your point, leadership is not being afraid of asking those questions. And almost for me, I had to kind of think, okay, I admire the managers or the leaders that I admire the most are the ones that are asking the questions or not being afraid to maybe look quote unquote silly. The leaders that I kind of don't necessarily like gel with the most are the ones that are acting like they know everything or unwilling to ask for help. So I'm sure that kind of took maybe a muscle like to build almost to get past that mindset. Cause I'm in it right now. I'll just say, I'm very comfortable in my little bubble. And of course I love to lead when the opportunity comes, but there's always that like, oh, am I the right person to do this? Like, are they sure that they want me to do that? So any kind of thoughts on or advice for people who might be in that similar position?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the biggest things for me was settling into, it's going to sound kind of crazy, but settling into heart. When I really started to look at how can I drop out of my head into my heart and be leading from that space, that was a huge change because I related to people on a very different level, that a way that they could meet me from a place that they were in and be able to communicate with me in a whole different light. It was basically coming out of an ego-driven sort of interaction to a heart-driven interaction. And the more that I stayed in the heart, the more I could connect with people and they would have a lot more trust and engagement in their own work, but also in me as a leader. And I am not perfect at it by any stretch. You can talk to anyone that's reported to me. You will get the full rundown. But I can say that it's the interactions that were, heart-based were some of the most powerful. And that included being vulnerable about, you know what, I don't understand this myself. And you mentioned this. It's just that vulnerability of accepting where I am right now. And I need your help understanding it, or let's go figure it out together.
Yeah.
When I first got hired at Snap, I was definitely I was in this place of why on earth did they hire me, even after so many years of being in senior leadership positions at Microsoft. And I kept having that ego mind of saying, people are expecting you to know a lot. They expect you to come in here and really take them to the next level. And I'm like, okay, how am I going to do that?
Yeah.
So, but when I stepped into my heart, I said, I've got to learn. I've got to show respect for where we are today. Meet people, understand where they are, where do they want to go. And the biggest thing that was, I think, pivotal in terms of how some of the relationships, and you have to talk to them too, but some of the sort of emerged was I literally bought a small whiteboard that I could carry around with me. And because we didn't have whiteboards in all the rooms. We were on Venice Beach, and most of the rooms were without whiteboards. And in fact, they were in apartments that we had turned into offices, and we still needed to meet city code. But that's a whole nother story. So I actually took a little whiteboard and markers around with me and said, please help me understand your space. I know that you've owned this, and I'm very visual. So let's sit down and walk through it. And I think that was really important to people, because I didn't go in with expecting like I understood everything, but that I really wanted to integrate what they were saying, and they got a chance to explain it in a visual way. And that relationship started to really build. And so I think going in with that sort of understanding of, know everything, look at how can you lead from the heart? Where are you ego driven and just needing to outdo others or prove yourself in such a way? It really takes away from that more authentic leadership style.
Yeah, that's such a great piece of advice. And I think whether you're leading or individual contributing, trying to take yourself out of the ego and leading with the heart is a great piece of advice. And one thing that I was thinking about as you were talking, you had a sense of your own awareness, right? So you'd mentioned that you knew you were a visual learner. So you took it upon yourself to get what you needed, the tools that you needed. It was the whiteboard, it was the markers, and you put yourself into the teams to say, hey, I'm friendly. I want to learn your domain. You're the expert in this. Please explain it to me. I could imagine the teams that you were talking to, they were probably tickled and just like so happy. And I'm sure it was a refreshing feeling for them to be like, wow, this new leader is coming to me to have me explain what I'm doing. Wow, what an honor, and in a way that I'm comfortable with. So again, kind of going back to those traits of like admirable leaders, I think that is a huge piece of it, is coming down to everyone's level, and not coming down, but trying to meet them to where they are, and not necessarily coming in with like a demanding kind of demeanor. And that creates toxicity, pressure. People are afraid. So I think that leading with the heart is really helpful. And my question back to you, how do you lead with your heart without emotion?
Oh, well, I don't remember saying anything about without emotion. There's nothing about this whole.
Okay, that's good. That's good.
It's a great question. By the way, I'll just add one piece that was really important. I'll get to your question, but there's one piece that I think was really important in that exchange with people as I was learning the space and letting them know I'm new, and also inviting them to give me feedback along the way if I get something wrong. But once I had learned as much as I could, at least in that time frame, I really tried to echo what I heard. So that to me was it was another big step in sort of building trust with the team, in that I was putting myself out there to say, here's what I heard.
Right.
Is this accurate? And this is in the context where I think some of the things that we want to do going forward. But before we do that, I want to make sure I really understand where we are today. And here's what I've heard. Did I get it right? Help me know where I got it wrong. And giving people a chance to hear, again, how I would describe what they shared with me, but also an opportunity to correct or affirm what I had heard and what I had taken away. I think there was a deep appreciation for that way of, engaging with the team.
Yeah, the communication aspect for sure. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And so the emotion piece, call it out.
Okay.
I say call it out. For me, and before I would say, and I'm still practicing it to this day.
Yeah.
So even with the people that I work with, I'm still in practice. But I did feel like I had to hold the emotions in, and that led to depression, that led to anxiety, that led to additional stress. It just be emotionless at work, take it home and let it out there, but come back with a straight face. And I think there's a lot of people that have very different views about being fully yourself at work versus bring the part that is supposed to work. And I don't think that it's possible to enter spaces by eliminating parts of yourself and be healthy. So to me, what I like to do is call it out. I would say, I'm really frustrated in this moment and I work through it. And this is why I'm frustrated. And this is what I think can help me get through it. But how are you feeling in this moment as well? The acknowledgement of like me practicing, naming what it is, as well as offering the space for the other person. This takes time. This takes coming out of the head. This takes very intentional mindset, and it takes practice. But I think it's extremely important, especially at this time for leaders in our spaces, in the tech spaces, where there's so much anxiety and stress and fear about all the layoffs happening and the change and the uncertainty in the air. It is something that I'm actually writing about, because I think it's important to have this sort of anchor in terms of, heart-led or heartful leadership. I don't think that we dismiss the emotion or hold it back. I think when it is very, very at the forefront of the engagement, I think it's important to name it, to call it out, because it's where we're acting from, because it's where I'm acting. If I'm frustrated, I'm acting from that frustration. And that person may be taking it completely differently, and they're taking it personal, thinking they did a whole bunch of other things wrong. And it may be completely a different thing. Like, I'm frustrated that I didn't get this out in time for you to respond to it. Not that you didn't get it back to me in time. There's a whole different conversation happening. If I call it as it's happening and explain exactly where that emotion is attached to. And, there's a couple of books, Dare to Lead by Brene Brown and Forms of Respect by Julie Pham, who's a friend of mine. Those are, I think they offer a lot of great tools to bring into leadership that sort of creates that vulnerable space. That's all that heartful living or heartful leadership that I think is really important, especially when you're entering the spaces as a new leader. Yeah. And then, and especially when revisiting as a seasoned leader.
Absolutely. That's so refreshing to hear. Emotion, when it's not handled properly in work settings, can come out in very ugly ways. And I love what you're saying of like, you can speak it. It doesn't have to be ugly. You don't have to raise your voice. You don't have to point fingers, call names. But maybe by calling it out early on, maybe that's what will actually prevent all of the sticky stuff that sometimes happens, which ends up, that's what people are afraid of, which is why they don't share their emotions or act on it. So it's this very like messy yarn ball full of different threads. And I love what you're saying, because it's making me think, hopefully, if you're many teams or many companies that I've been working with, they love to celebrate the wins, right? So if we're to your point about we're operating from that emotion. Hey everyone, hope you're enjoying the episode so far. If you haven't already, why don't you take a second to click follow or subscribe on the platform you're tuning into so that you won't miss a second of Badasses in Tech. Also, if you're really loving what you're hearing today, why don't you drop us a 5-star review or leave us a positive comment, as it really helps the podcast grow and helps us continue doing what we're doing, which is helping people become a badass. Because I think a lot of people need to hear it. Especially individual contributors who are trying to prove that, I can lead. I can be stoic. I don't need to, I actually have to be, right? And again, that's all the antithesis of leading.
I think there's a bit of that, Summer. I think that is difficult. It depends on the environment you're in.
Definitely.
The reward system and where you are in your career.
Yeah.
Are you able to walk away? Are you able? You have to be there for at least a time, like you're creating an exit strategy. And so in some ways, I do acknowledge the fact that it's easier said than done. But I think as leaders, it is up to us to take that responsibility. It is up to us to create that space. And it is up to us to question those, even, our superiors, to create that space, especially at a time like today when, there's just so much anxiety and concern that creativity is really being sort of stifled by people's, worry about the next day and what the direction the company is going.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to acknowledge that fact that the environment does matter, and as leaders, it's a courageous move.
Yeah. No, I think what you're saying, it's very important, and I assume I'm getting the sense that all of these leadership techniques and all of the wonderful things that you learned across your career at Microsoft and Snap, I'm assuming that's kind of what brought you to where you are today. Is that right? So do you want to tell us a little bit more about Sarell and kind of this great mission that you have for creating a sustainable future? I love that. We need more of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think throughout my career, one thing, a common theme was, how are we listening? How are we listening to our customers? But when I was at Microsoft, there was a time when I was really perplexed by why we didn't have tools in place to listen to ourselves, right? We, as employees, we were using the same products, marketing, sales, researchers, people are using Excel, they're using Word, and yet there was no clear framework, no clear way to inform the team if you were running into a bug or you didn't like the way it was designed or you needed a certain feature. And we had this listening channel externally facing. And I thought, gosh, we really care. We really are invested in the success of this product. Why aren't we listening more actively? And so I embarked on a project to try to create a mechanism, a platform where anyone could, submit issues or suggestions for features. And that project was called Love, Listening to Our Voice. And it was a very fun project, and I think it did take off, and it's still alive today in its new form. But I think that for me, witnessing a lot of the conflict, war, character assassination, especially in our politics, the way that we're engaging with each other these days is all a part of wounds untended. And I think that there's a tremendous opportunity for us to heal. I call it global relational healing. I think within ourselves, with our friends and family, colleagues, coworkers, even up to a national and international level, these relationships, we need some healing. And technology is in the fabric of our DNA, right? It is a part of our existence to the core. And so it's a catalyst to me. It is a great tool to use to help us heal. But before we can heal, we have to be able to listen. We have to be able to hear and understand how we are affecting each other through our products beyond the usability of it. So oftentimes these our feedback tools are asking, do you like this feature? Is it usable? What would you change? It's about
scale 1 to 10. What's your rating? Yeah.
Exactly. But there's not much about how it's affecting me psychologically or mentally and emotionally.
Wow.
And so that well-being piece, I think, is a very key component that needs to be added to how we define success. And so I've been thinking a lot about how do we embed social well-being as a metric into our customer feedback mechanisms. And that helps us understand at a more holistic level how our customers are experiencing our products. And that adds to the whole concept around listening and then responding. Did I hear what you said? And then how, if and when there are issues that are incurring harm, how can we co-create solutions that not only mitigate the harm, but promote healing. And so I'm embarking on an invitation to the industry to reset intention in terms of embedding a social well-being element into how we define success. And that become not only certifiable in terms of people, businesses being able to say, okay, we've got a package that we've integrated into our product development cycle, that we are committed to not only serving the usability, the usefulness of the product, but we also want to know and we want to make sure that your well-being is at the heart of this. The thing that I think is important that I've learned in the last couple of months is that a lot of the product equity leaders, a lot of product managers that I've talked to feel that it's difficult to promote such a big pivot within their organization, because a lot of it is driven by profit, and they don't kind of see how that is correlated. And I would beg to differ that, hey, if I trust you because you actually care about my well-being, I am more likely to invest in your services, your products. But the thing that I really started to understand more is that public policy is a very important pathway that Sarell will need to embark on. I'm excited about it because I think once we get into policy, there's a lot of tech policies coming out. And I think that's a great space to do what I call scaling accountability as tech evolves and keeping pace with it. Because if we have that listening element embedded, then there's so much more successful in making sure that we are keeping account to the well-being of people and ultimately contributing to healing. So that healing and that sustainability are tied together. And I'm super excited about it. I'm very passionate about it. And I'm working currently on focusing on the intention setting so that I can re-anchor to it when all of the distractors come.
Right.
Which is important.
Oh my gosh. I'm so happy that there are people like you out in the world that are thinking about this. And I feel very safe knowing, especially what we're talking about, you are very tapped into your heart and your well-being and all this. Like, I fully trust you in this endeavor. And if anyone is listening and they're wanting to make sure that their products or their features map back to our healing, please give Tammarrian a call. Let's get this solved. Let's get this figured out. I have a few questions for you on this one. For those individuals or companies or executives that are wanting to add this metric or wanting to try to track this, what would be a good goal or OKR or kind of metric that they can start measuring or even looking for?
Yeah, this is a great question because I have been looking at how to measure social well-being today. There's so many different tools out there. WHO5 is one. But I'm really trying to understand the best way to integrate this in a way that people can take it and take action against it. The thing that I think has been, that I am fully confident in is that we tend to shy away from anything that is not measurable by numbers, right? We're like, oh, I can't do it. It's qualitative. It's not, I can't do anything. We're super smart. We're a super smart species. We can figure this out. But there are certain things that are orthogonal to these changes. So if you are looking at engagement, if you are looking at adoption, if you are looking at the ways that people are responding to other, when you're inviting them to give you feedback, those are metrics that would talk to this listening aspect of, social, the well-being. The other thing is the internal. So I like to think about the people that are working on the products really want to be a part of something that they believe is doing good in the world, that they are contributing to something that they believe in. And so internal surveys are a huge indicator of how much your business, the people within your company believe in your product. So you should see morale increase. You should see trends going up in terms of belief in the product, belief in what it's doing, morale, creativity, enthusiasm. Those are some metrics that are indicators that you're investing in an aspect of understanding the customer experience that they believe in.
Yeah.
Now, I am having a convening. Sarell is having a convening in November.
Nice.
And I have folks in civil service. I have folks in psychology, product leaders, technologists, researchers, social scientists. They're all coming together to talk about this in a way of understanding what tools do we have today?
Right.
What are the metrics that can be used? What's already going on out there? There's so many conversations happening that just pulling this in with a very, very clear intention around embedding it into feedback mechanisms today, and devising a strategy and plan around this that we can do some research on. I anticipate there may be some interest, especially with some policymakers that are looking at what can we do to sort of stay at pace or ahead of the changes in technology. And I think this is a good research program as well. So I would say probably within the 6 to 12 months, you'll start to see some traction around the language of measuring and metrics and ways to integrate and adopt these practices to test them out. And I'm very excited about it. And this is also on my website, so people can take a look at the convening coming up, but also be able to follow how this progresses over time, especially if you want to be engaged in the conversation itself.
Which it sounds like that is the most important part of it. What you're saying, it's almost going to be a collective effort,
Yes.
Especially with all of the leaders that they have what you're saying, the engagement metrics, the internal surveys, all of those, most companies are doing already. So what you're saying, it's not, we need to completely reinvent the wheel or create a whole new metric or a whole new system. What I'm hearing you say is most of us are already doing what needs to be done, but we're not necessarily maybe listening to the data points or integrating the data points in a way that will help us kind of solve this big problem that all of us are going to be impacted, whether you're a consumer, or a leader, or a product manager, creating the code, whatever. Like, it is on all of us to have an active voice and to listen and to lead with our heart. So all of these philosophies I'm hearing all of us could kind of take and run with. So this is just wonderful. I'm super excited for you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm excited about it. One of the things that I like about talking about this is oftentimes I'm just curious if people think about it. I talk to people just randomly and about how they're experiencing technology in their life.
Yeah.
Also, where do they have a lot of trust? Where are they concerned? And then I'll just try out just showing what if there was something that you could share, how it was affecting you beyond its use, like if it was how it was affecting you emotionally, like an hour after using it, how did you feel? It's very interesting how people, a light bulb goes off and they're like, that would never happen. And I said, well, what if it did? And they say, well, that would be fantastic, because then I would worry less about my kids. And then I would probably be able to, I'd have a bit more confidence that people weren't just using me for profit, but that there was a humane element to it. So I'm testing out the idea. And those that are listening, if you have some encouraging or even discouraging words, I take all feedback. I'm more than happy to hear.
That's wonderful. This sounds like pretty large feat, right? Like, this sounds big. This sounds like world changing. So walk me through how you've been able to push yourself through. I'm sure you've ran into a dozen challenges. You don't seem like you've lost any bit of steam. How are you keeping yourself motivated in spite of maybe the challenges that you faced so far?
Well, it's a great question. I can't say it's been a perfect run. Like, I've been, there's been a time when I was like, I think I need to shut this down. And that was a time that I just felt like I hadn't done much. I just felt, based on 30 years in corp tech, where every day was very structured and I was very busy, and there was metrics and goals and outcomes and OKRs and something every day. And now I have much more space and time to actually sit with intention and to be more clear about how to, go on this journey. That comparison is still there. Oh, wait, I should be doing so much more. But when I did that, I said it out loud to myself. It didn't feel good. So that was one indicator. I also called a couple of friends that have heard me talk about it, and they said, totally normal. It's good. You want to keep going.
Yeah.
And I gave myself some time. I said, I'm going to do this for this much time, and I'm going to see where we are. And then I'll make the next decision. And so it's giving myself permission to feel the feelings, express them, have sort of this support system in place that I can talk to and reach out to, who can mirror to me what I said before. One other wonderful tool that I learned from a therapist many, many years ago was not only writing down the intention or writing down sort of my why, so that I could go back to it. But it is something extraordinary about hearing my voice. I know some people say I don't like hearing my voice, I can't stand it.
Yeah.
But there is something sort of amazing about hearing my voice from a time where I was clear to help anchor me to that heart, to that place. And so even recording some of the why when I'm at the most clear time is an extremely powerful tool to be able to carry forward. And then the other thing I'd add is being in networks and environments where people are talking about it, where that energy continues to build. That vibe is everlasting. So, for example, All Tech is Human is an organization that is all about responsible tech, and there are so many people in that organization that I can reach out to, and just even if it's just to find out what they're working on. There's so much enthusiasm and momentum in the group. So I think it's just being clear, being okay with the emotions, expressing them, and being able to tap into the resources, the people that believe and that know you, and who will hold you when you fall, who will also be okay if you stop. Like I feel very comfortable if I said, I think I'm going to stop. And they say, do you really want to? If I said yes, they say, okay, what can we do to help you to make that transition? That's, I think, a really, really important piece of that support system. And then the network, and then being able to write down and also speak, record myself. So like back to that. I think those are some of the tools that I've been able to use to keep myself going and excited, and motivated.
That's really powerful. And it sounds like, everything ebbs and flows, and we can't do it alone. And I'm sure now, based on comparing your experience, kind of, the 30 years in tech, you're probably feeling like you're planting seeds and then maybe seeing them grow in a different way versus every day felt like you were planting a seed and seeing the fruit type of thing. So I can definitely relate. And there's a lot of times when, we got to trust ourselves. We got to trust ourselves. And I will definitely, believe it or not, I record these podcasts. I hate the sound of my voice. Spoiler alert. But I will try to maybe give myself like a little motivational speech one day when I'm feeling like, wow, I just really crushed that interview, or wow, I really landed a great piece of coverage for my client. Like I'll go to the bathroom and just record a little pep talk to myself now.
I think that's a great idea. Trust me, when I heard myself, I was like, I know I'm not going to like this, but I've actually done a love letter to myself. And that is kind of crazy to listen to. But then in that hard moment, it was wonderful. Right. It was an absolutely wonderful gift to myself. And that to me is not only to myself, but to others, because it affects how I show up to others.
Absolutely.
But that acceptance of just the ebbs and flows that those are going to happen, I think is really, really important. And there are ways to navigate it and that fit with your own personality.
Right. Yeah, but we have to be our own advocate. And I've heard you many times over this conversation. It all starts with knowing what's driving you and knowing those very individual kind of things that make you tick or make you super excited or maybe drain you, and how can you kind of structure your day or make sure that you're connecting with the right person or the right people when you know that maybe you're going to be dealing with something a little bit difficult. So I think you're doing a wonderful job. And I'd love to talk a little bit more about this nomad, the solo nomad, because that feels like a whole extra gift that you're doing for yourself, advocating in your travels. So let's hear a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I didn't know that this was going to happen. Just again, curiosity.
Right.
Here we are.
Here we are.
In 2019, I was on safari in Botswana, and I was safari with a friend, and it was just this moment that I had this epiphany that I was going to move to Europe. Didn't know why. At the time, I was living in Los Angeles, California, and it just seemed like the craziest thought. And my friend asked, what are you thinking? I was like, I just had this thought that I was going to move to Europe. And she's like, I can see that. I'm like, okay, you're out of this conversation. So I went back. I have a routine life out,
right.
Racquetball and my dog and family, all of that. But over those 2 years, things just started happening, removing all of the excuses that I had for not doing this. And so, to make a long story short, it all became a heart-led journey where I could not tell you why that I felt pulled to move to Europe. I didn't know where in Europe. I hadn't been in Europe long enough to say, this is it.
Yeah.
I said, I'm moving. So I applied for a visa. It's still taking a while. And so I ended up getting a one-way flight to Amsterdam in January of 2022. Fell in love with Amsterdam, the Netherlands, loved the place. And because I was still sort of waiting for this visa, I had to honor the tourist visa, which means that I get out of Europe after 90 days, So I said, well, okay, that means I need to continue. I need to travel.
Yeah.
So I started to do the traveling that I had put in the back of my head over the years. Like, I want to go to Greece, or I want to go to Norway, or I want to go to the Galapagos Islands. Oh, I want to go to Australia. Oh, wait, I want to do the 4 Grand Slams, tennis Grand Slams.
Yeah.
So now going back, I am extremely, extremely fortunate. I am extremely lucky. I have had the opportunity to work at large international companies.
Right.
Times that they were doing really well financially. They were stable. People could come in and do their best work. And there wasn't this level of fear and anxiety that we kind of feel today. And so, and with the help of my financial advisor, who helped me understand what a stock option was.
Right. That trusted network.
Yes, exactly. And being honest about, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And I need help. And who can help? And I just so happened to find somebody I could trust, and that I'll be forever grateful for her. She's now retiring, so we'll see how all that goes. But anyway, so being able to do these travels and being untethered to a product, because 35 years I've always had some product I was working on, and I'd like to see the world through that context. But now it's Tammarrian, and Tammarrian is founder of Sarell, but Sarell is still forming and not sure how this is going to go quite yet. And so I've just been absolutely amazed at the people I've had an opportunity to meet, because there's no real, reason like, I need you to do this. It's just sitting somewhere and engaging in a conversation randomly and getting into some very deep conversations really, really quickly.
Yeah.
Because somehow I think people have a comfort maybe knowing that I'll evaporate eventually because I'm only here for a minute and then I'm going. But somehow we get into a very deep conversation. So I've enjoyed not only the different places I've visited, but especially the people. And over time, my reasons, how I would spend my time in these locations has changed. Before, early on, I'd be excited about visiting certain places within, the city, town, or country I was in. Oftentimes I just stumble upon stuff that's because I'm just curiously walking. I'd find, a park on the map and I'd say, I'm going to make my way to that park and whatever I see. And oftentimes I'd find some major tourist attraction that I love. And so, and that type of living out of curiosity is it's outstanding. And it also offers a huge opportunity to learn a lot more about myself. Because I've always been in the context of some type of relationship, and to be with myself and make decisions without the consideration of others beyond who I interact with on that day. It offers a lot of learning, and a lot of mirroring of who I am and how I operate, and so it's been an incredible journey. Now, I did acquire a visa in the UK, and so now I'm living in London, and I'll be here. I have permission to be here for 3 years. We'll see if it can extend, but I'm still waiting on my visa in the EU. So
that's wonderful.
It's been an extraordinary ride, and some people have asked me a lot of questions and have asked me to blog about some of the experiences I've had. So I may be sharing some of those as well.
Oh, well, we will watch that space for sure. And I love what you were saying of you just kind of felt this pull and you didn't question it. You maybe it took you a little bit of time, like you said, to remove the excuses, but you've been this beautiful inspiration of just kind of trusting yourself, following that feeling in your gut, being present, leading with your heart. And I'm sure this kind of uncertainty that you're maybe navigating right now, I'm sure there's so many seeds that you're planting that in 6 months, a year, however long, maybe next week, we'll see some wonderful fruits. And I'm just so happy to have been a part of this conversation and to be part of your bubble and your community. Because like I said, this is such important work. And now is the time to really, for all of us to think differently about how are we measuring success and what is the impact that we want to leave? We're only all here for a blip. So let's just leave it. Let's just leave it at that. Let's have everyone think a little bit about that.
I hear you. I'm with you on that. 100%.
Awesome. Well, Tammarrian, where can everyone find you? I know you mentioned a few upcoming events. You mentioned a website. Do you want to give us a little bit more of where exactly some of those details we can find?
Yeah, Sarell.tech, SARELL.TECH. That's my website. Is constantly being updated, but I hope it gives you a good idea of what we're working on and the current projects underway. The convening in November. I've also started a bit of a podcast series, a short one, just to see if it's interesting. Interviewing some of the people I've met in the last 2.5 years of traveling and just connecting people, because Sarell is all about connecting people and reducing the othering and really just creating space for us to see and hear different perspectives, connect a little bit better, make room for the healing that I think is underway, more sustainable earth and living with each other. So everything that happens within that space contributes to that connection and ultimately that being able to listen and hear to each other.
Yeah, I love it. Well, Tammarrian, thank you so much. I'll definitely be subscribing to Sarell.tech and we'll be checking out all of your wonderful events and blog posts and podcasts. Keep it going. We want all of this. We need as much Tammarrian as we can have in our lives. That's for sure. It's been so wonderful talking with you, and really, truly an honor and an inspiration. I can't wait to see what you're able to do next.
Thank you, Summer. And thank you for all that you're doing with Badasses in Tech. I really love the work you're doing, and I wish you the best for the rest of this year and into next.
Badasses in Tech is brought to you by Growth Stack Media. If you're looking to scale your business affordably through public relations, video production, or podcasting, we've got you covered. Visit growthstackmedia.com to get in touch today.